Welcome to Stories from the Center of the Universe, the podcast about the human experience.
Al Lester, welcome to the Center of the Universe.
Thanks for having me. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing great, man. I guess we should mention a couple things before we get going. You've been on this podcast before with Kevin, and I think we talked about golf for like 90% of that episode.
We did a little bit of background, but we primarily talked about golf.
I like golf, but not nearly as much as you two. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit. I should also mention that Kevin Flippen is back as co-host. I'll remind everybody that his name is the occasional co-host, Kevin Flippen. And then I guess we should also talk about how the two of you know each other. You told me the other day, but tell our audience.
All right, so me and Kevin. What's up, Flip?
What's up? Glad to be here.
Me and Kevin know each other through my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law, L.A. Green. As I understand, him and Kevin have been friends for a long time, dating back to their high school days. We all have kids now close to the same age. We were at my niece's, Kaylin's, birthday party. I don't know how many years ago now, Kevin. It's had to been every bit of at
10.
least 10, maybe more.
Yep.
And we're sitting there at this little kid's birthday party with all the kid trimmings and everything. And so happened to be Kaylin's birthday is Masters weekend. So is it Masters weekend or the weekend before, Kevin?
I think
that year, I think it was Masters weekend.
Yeah, that weekend it was, yeah.
So we're trying to skip out on the birthday party and find the TV so we can watch the Masters. And so we cut that on, start talking golf, and the next thing you know, I'm like, I love golf. Flip is like, I love golf too. How often do you play? At that point, I was playing 2 or 3 times a week. And we hit it off from there. I mean, we knew each other before then, but golf was the thing that really kind of kick-started things. But I would say we're pretty inseparable now.
Insufferable and inseparable.
I had the opportunity to play with both of you. Of course, Kevin and I played a few times together before, but Al, you and I had never played before. I had not played in quite some time. I look like a really bad golfer. I strike the ball like a really bad golfer. When I hit the ball in a fairway it's not supposed to go to, I won't even go retrieve the ball. It's amazing I made it to the 18th hole. And by the way, I really didn't because I think I stopped playing around the 14th hole. You two look like golfers. You actually have nice swings. Now, the ball doesn't always go where you want it to go. But you at least look like good golfers. And Kevin dresses the part. So, Al, the last time we played, could you describe Kevin's outfit for us?
Yeah, the last time we played, what did we call these things? Shameless plugs. If anybody from Nike listens to this, please start paying Kevin because he's wearing all your stuff. Shoes, socks, belt, pants, shirt, hat. I had to go ahead and give him my Nike glove to finish the whole thing out, but it was Nike all the way down.
Hey, so Al, you missed at least one article of clothing. He had an undershirt, long sleeve undershirt that I believe was also Nike.
He did. Oh man, I did miss that. That is important too.
And hold on, Kevin. And he denied wearing Nike underwear.
I do not have Nike underwear, but you have to remember, and I do have a problem. I kind of stay loyal to Nike. There are some other things that I'll wear, but when you like Nike or Air Jordan stuff, that's what you get for gifts. Like all the stuff I had on was probably some Christmas or birthday present. So I blame my wife some too.
That's your excuse. Okay, we'll go with that excuse.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
But we had a good time. At one point, Al and I were standing next to each other, and Kevin, you and our fourth player, I guess we can mention him, Kenny Wingle. Kenny was decked out in all Adidas.
Yeah, we had competing brands going on.
Kevin was all Nike, and Al pointed it out for me. I'm glad he did because I wouldn't have picked up on it otherwise.
Well, it's funny because, yeah, I don't even recognize that I have all Nike. I was looking at Kenny going, man, he's got all Adidas on. Look at him. That's crazy. And then Al's like, have you looked in the mirror today? Oh, yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point. And by the way, Al, we dragged Paul out on a golf trip several years ago. So he actually went to a Myrtle Beach golf trip, and he did not. I don't know if you played all 4 rounds.
I guarantee I didn't.
You went all the way to Myrtle,
too, but
I went all the way to Myrtle for some specific reasons, and we talked about them some in our last round. Al,
I hear you. Well, I mean, if we stay in Virginia, you got to come this year.
Yeah. Maybe. Hey, Al, I'm telling you, how long ago did we play together? Like a week and a half ago?
Yeah.
My knee is still hurting.
Hey, I deal with that all. My back still hurt, but hey, it is what it is.
Your love of golf may be a lot greater than mine.
Understood. That's fair.
All right. Hey, Al, you did not grow up in Virginia. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the small town of Hinesville, Georgia, which is a distant suburb of Savannah, Georgia.
And why did the family raise you there?
Raised there because my dad was in the military. He went in the military once he graduated high school. I was born in Miami, Florida, but his first station, Fort Stewart, Georgia, was the first place he was stationed. And we moved to that area at that point.
And y'all stayed there because he got out after a few years?
No. So here's the unique thing about that. My dad was in the Army until about 92. My mom was not an avid traveler. So when he got his overseas stationing, he requested that we stay at the base, and he kept getting granted that. So my dad had trips to Korea, trips to Germany, Alaska that we didn't go. We actually stayed behind.
Did he end up doing 20?
No, unfortunately, he didn't end up doing 20. He got his honorable discharge disability after about 15 years. So at that point, he got out of the military, started working in the private sector.
All right, so you grew up at Fort Stewart.
I did. That is where I grew up. I grew up on the base. I went to school. Well, we lived on base until I was in the 8th grade, and that's when we moved off base into Hinesville. And I finished up my high school time living in Hinesville. That's right.
So your kindergarten through 8th grade, you were actually on Fort Stewart going through a U.S. military education, effectively.
That is correct.
All right, so you got to tell us about that. So I guess your perspective, because you have daughters who have been through elementary school, and you have a pretty good sense of what that's like beyond a military base. What was it like in 3rd grade or 6th grade going through a military school like that?
Say that again, Paul. You froze up on me.
Yeah, all good. What was it like going through a school that the federal government, well, actually Department of Defense, was putting together and paying for? That had to be different than what your daughters experienced.
Yeah, I mean, obviously at that time I didn't know any different, right? But thinking back on it now, the biggest thing was the kids that were coming in and out. You know, the consistency. I think now with my kids talking about, you know, we talk about specialty schools and going to different schools and the opportunities that are provided now, private schools. My kids, the first thing they reference is, well, I want to go to school with my friends. The interesting part about me coming up was that my friends changed year to year depending on what kids were coming in and out because their parents were being stationed at Fort Stewart or they were being stationed elsewhere. So that was the biggest part, just how much turnover you had from year to year in friends. So you really learned how to greet people, meet people, make new friends, which is something I think the kids these days, quite frankly, struggle with.
Now, how that is odd. That's really odd because, to Paul's point earlier, Paul, I think, weren't you Germany?
I was born in Germany, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, most military kids are moving around. I'm not saying, Paul, you moved around a lot, but most military families are moving around. And that's why the children don't have the same friends. You actually were in one spot and everybody else was moving around. So that's why you didn't have the same friends. I mean, that's the first time I've ever heard of that. That's definitely very, very interesting. Now, there weren't a lot. Were you playing sports at that time? I mean, you're kind of young, I guess, but I mean, what did y'all play in the street back then? And we used to play kickball and stickball.
I mean, we played everything. The unique thing about a military base, and I think that when I think back to my childhood, is you had everything kind of on a military base. They made sure they cared for any type of extracurricular. So you had everything in the neighborhood. You had the neighborhood playground, the neighborhood tennis courts, the neighborhood basketball courts. So you literally could it was all right there for you. So literally, pick up the ball, go knock on a friend's door. You're at the community basketball court, every day, every other day. We're out riding bikes. I mean, it was cool. You just made friend after friend after friend. And what was cool during that time, the base was kind of the limits. We kind of get protective of our kids now, and it's try to keep them in eyesight. But we really had the whole base to kind of roam. The thought was, look, all these kids are the same. They're military brats. They really don't have to worry about them too much. Go have a good time and be a kid.
Yeah, that's it's an unusual. To Kevin's point, you're the only person I know that stayed on a post for that long. I mean, you were on the same post for, sounds like 13, 14 years, and everybody around you was changing out every 1, 2, or 3 years.
Yeah, my situation is super unique. It's so many people that I know that were like a part of my life for like a year or two while they were there. But I stayed constant. I think that's why when we moved off of the base, it was a much easier transition for me to kind of transition in with what you would call the local folks, the folks that had raised families there, their cousins, their grandmothers all lived there because I had been there growing up with them the whole time.
Yeah. So when you were in 7th and 8th grade, was there a school sports program or teams every season kind of thing, or did that not exist?
Yeah, no, we did middle school sports, and I'll tell you the interesting thing. I'll take it back a little bit. When I started playing football, I was 8 or 9, and one of the things that we did, you generally on the base, you had one team at each age level, but the way that we played the local teams around. That's how I got to learn, gain all the local friends and the local competition. I say that to say the unique thing is that in middle school, because we all went at that point, we went to the same middle school as the local kids. So everybody's kind of being integrated together. Now you have all of these local kids and you got the military kids kind of coming together and trying to see who's the best of the best. But we had football, we played baseball and basketball all in the 7th and 8th grade.
That's cool. And then you moved into what was the reason the family moved into Hinesville right before your freshman year?
That was the point in which my dad discharged out of the Army.
And did your dad grow up in that part of Georgia, or just like, hey, we know this community, we'll just stay here?
My mom was adamant at that point that we had been such a part of the community that we needed to stay. We needed to stay for the kids, stay for me, right? I was going into high school. I had known that place all my life. Let's stay here. My dad actually grew up in Miami. That's why I'm a Miami Dolphins fan.
Gotcha. And we can come back to the NFL because we're right at the precipice of the beginning of the playoffs. I really don't want to talk about the Chargers, but I imagine we'll end up bringing up the Chargers a little bit. So in 7th and 8th grade, what was your favorite sport?
Baseball.
And did you play outfield? Because you're a lefty, right?
I'm not a lefty. Most people think that because both my daughters are, but no, I'm a righty.
Okay. So you could play anywhere on the field. What'd you end up playing mostly?
When I first started playing baseball, I played outfield. I played left field. Primarily, I was bigger, faster than the other kids at that time. Could get the ball into the infield. And we started out in pitching machine, so that was I liked playing outfield at that point. As we got a little bit older and moved into kid pitch, I started pitching. And I like playing third base. And I also played first. So I played the corners and I pitched as I got older. But I started out in left field.
Did football become your favorite sport at some point, or you just knew that it might have been your best sport? I'm making an educated guess it was your best sport considering you played in college.
Interesting part about that, Paul, is I don't think football is my best sport.
Here we go.
No, I do think baseball is my best sport. It just got to the point, baseball, although I love the game, sometimes the environment didn't work for me. That's a long story. We can kind of get into that, but football, what football became for me was, I was at that level in Hinesville, Georgia, I was a very good football player comparatively. I think the powers that be. So let me retract. When I was in middle school, this is where it kind of all started. And I told you where the locals and the military kids converged. I was good at football, but I didn't get to play the position that I ended up playing, and that was quarterback. We could say I was beat out. I would say the coaches chose to play the local kid at quarterback over me, but that's fine. I got to play receiver at that point. Baseball, I still pitched, still played the corners, but there was just kind of a transition into, all right, football is really looks really good on the football field. Baseball field, he's good, but we got some local talent here that we really like. The sport that I blossomed in most in middle school, believe it or not, Kevin's gonna love this, was basketball. So 8th grade, I'm 5'10", couldn't quite dunk yet, but could touch the rim. Athletic, lived off my athleticism. It made me the best basketball player on the team. Kind of carried through to high school. The thought was basketball. Still good in the other two, but basketball was it. And then I just started having major success in football. And the more success I had in football, the more the basketball program and the baseball program kind of went away from me, I will say. It wasn't that I didn't want to do it. I think the powers that be kind of decided for me that you're a football guy.
And so it sounds like you were on the seam between, like when I grew up, everybody loved the fact that kids played all kinds of different sports. It sounds like there started to be adults saying, hey, kids should really commit to one versus playing 2 or 3.
Yeah, they the way I'll say it, when I was in high school, they liked the fact that you were a multi-sport athlete. They didn't like, in my opinion, they didn't like the fact that you were the best one in every one of them.
So are we talking about daddy ball and some parents not being happy with that?
Yeah, to some degree. I was told by my basketball coach, my senior year, because we got a new coach that came in. My first coach, Coach Paul, absolutely loved me. Had me play on varsity some as a freshman. But by the time I was a senior, he was gone. We had a new coach. Hey, you're a football player. Football players aren't basketball players. He believed basketball players had to be basketball first. The baseball team, hey, we know you're a great athlete. We know there are great things you can do out here, but you got football. These guys, baseball is what they do. So we're gonna give them a little more run. I mean, it is what it is.
So they weren't trying to win, in other words.
That's what I was going to say. That wasn't there on top of the priority list. Do you think there was something working behind the scenes? Was the football coach like really intimidating and would run into the basketball coach in the lounge and like threaten him? I mean, come on, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, it was. Trust me, it was odd for me. And I always look for the blessing, the silver lining in things. What it allowed me to do ultimately was really put my focus into football. So it ended up being a blessing in disguise because I had more time for football. And it was probably about the start of my junior year that I'm like, yeah, football is my ticket.
What grade did you start playing quarterback primarily?
10th grade.
And who was that a transition that you basically said, hey, coaches, this is what I want to play? Or did somebody see something in you?
No. So when I was in high school, we had 1,600 kids. And I say that to say we had a freshman team, we had a JV team, and we had a varsity team. When I was in 9th grade, all 9th graders play on the freshman team. Some get to play on the JV team. If you're exceptional, you play on the varsity. I wasn't the exceptional kid. I didn't even play on the JV team. I was on the 9th grade team. I started out that year like middle school at receiver. Coaches knew that I was a quarterback. And unfortunately, the quarterback that had been starting over me since middle school got injured. I'll say this as modestly as I can. Once he got injured, he never played the position again.
You're just stating a fact.
Yeah.
All right. And so when you started playing quarterback and you were the guy, were you like throw 50 times a game kind of guy? Were you a good mix of running and throwing? What was the position like for you in your junior and senior year?
No. So we down in South Georgia, they like to run the football. So believe it or not, in high school, I ran a lot of option. I'm not anybody that has seen me in person knows I'm not a prototypical option quarterback, but that's what we ran. My sophomore year, I played varsity, but we had a starting quarterback that was super good. A guy named Sultan Cooper, went to Albany State, got to learn a lot from him. Awesome athlete. But I was itching at my turn. Get to my junior year, it's my ball game at that point. We were doing well. We go to the region playoffs. We lose to a tough team. If I remember, the name was Camden County. They went on. I think they lost the state championship, but a super tough team. Great year. It was hard. We couldn't get by them. Senior year, we start off the year unblemished, 5-0. We proceeded to lose the next 5. We lost the next 5 by a total of 13 points.
Oof.
Damn. So my senior year didn't go how I wanted to, but I mean, you learn from that, right? It's hey, what little more could you have done to get us closer for 3 more points? Or, I remember losing a game 2-0. I end up getting tackled for a safety, and we lose a game 2-0. Who thinks you're gonna only give up 2 points but get shut out on the other end? But you learn a lot from that. You get humbled by stuff like that. It just makes you hungry.
All right, we're going to talk about how you ended up at the Virginia Military Institute in a second. But I distinctly remember when you and Kevin were co-guests on episode, I don't remember the number. It was 30-something, maybe 32, I think. Kevin said he remembered you from reading the paper, you playing quarterback at VMI, and you went by Alfred Lester, I think at the time. At least that's how the paper reported your name. When did you make the transition from Alfred to Al, at least with your friends kind of thing?
At the time I went to VMI, so that first year was kind of the transition year, transitioning from Alfred to just Al. I just thought it was simpler. Al Lester versus Alfred Lester. You know, it was just a simpler thing to say, simpler thing for other people to say, to remember. Believe it or not, Alfred gets pronounced a lot of different ways.
You got to give me 3 or 4 other ways to pronounce Alfred.
All right. Alford, Alfred, Alfred. It's real.
Hey,
They're not trying. I mean, all they have to do is look at the letters and take their time and say it right. I mean, come on.
So Al, you shortened it to Al. Why didn't you shorten it to Fred?
Who would do that?
I don't know. You want to be different. You want to be unique. You could be Fred Lester.
Yeah, listen to that. Say that again.
That's right. Good point.
No, Kevin has a fixation on a few things, and one of them is Sanford and Son. That's why he said the Fred thing.
I do.
Yeah.
Good point.
And why wouldn't you? Because he's one of the funniest guys ever lived.
Hey, Paul, before you go to college, with Alfred, Al, tell us the most memorable. What was the most memorable play that you had in high school? Like, I don't know if it was a touchdown you scored or threw or ran or tackle you made. What's the one memory that sticks out, a good memory from high school?
Good memory, but it didn't end the way I wanted to. Look, can I share 2 with you? Actually, they come to mind. My you could imagine senior year, starting quarterback, a lot of hype. First game out the gate, I told you we ran first. I threw maybe 10 passes, complete 7 for about $175 and 2 touchdowns. So, you know, after that game, I'm like, oh, it's on. We're coming out the gates hot. The second part of that year that was interesting was our punt returners had trouble fielding the punt. Y'all would never think this. I was the team punt returner.
Wait a minute.
It was different.
You ended up being the punt returner because the guys prior to that couldn't catch the ball?
The primary job was to catch the ball.
Got it.
Catch the ball. And don't get killed.
I think at some point I just let it drop. Let it hit the field and do whatever it do.
Don't get killed.
All right, so when did colleges start paying attention to you?
Right after my junior season, Naval Academy contacted me because at that time, and I don't know if it's still the rules, the academies can contact you earlier than the regular schools. So Naval Academy contacted me in my junior year. We're very interested at that time. At that time, it's very interesting. You thinking that this is 93. And what they tell me is, hey, we love you at quarterback, but with your frame, your height, you can play tight end too. Man, if I knew what I know now, I might have made that transition. But anyway, it was my junior year. Navy was first. And they really, you know, like I said, early contact, they can make contact. And then my senior year comes, and first school that comes to school to talk about recruiting is Southern Miss.
Nice.
Southern Miss, then West Georgia. And then I got some interest from Georgia and Georgia Tech. But I never did go on visits up there. I made a commitment to go to Navy. And, you know, my head coach had a lot of influence on that. He thought it was the best thing for me. What he told me at the time was, look, it's a great education. You got a job when you graduate. You're going to be a military officer. Stay in 4 years, stay in for a career. You're going to have a job when you get out. You know, his advice was, there's nothing better than that. I took that advice. I committed. VMI actually called me the day of signing day or the day after and said, hey, just take a visit. And I held my paperwork and I went and took a visit and ultimately decided to go to VMI. So I had to break my commitment to Navy to go to VMI.
What was it about the VMI visit that changed your mind?
Primarily the school. When I went up to Navy, I thought the school, the academic piece was very intimidating. That's just the God honest truth. And, you know, I even questioned, can I be successful here? And it had nothing to do with being intelligent. I'm smart, made good grades. It just, as I talked to the professors, it was like, oh, goodness, this is going to be tough. Then I got to VMI and professors were a little more inviting. Coach really drilled home the point that I would have the opportunity to start right away. That the teams that I would play against were more regional to where I grew up, so my family get to see me a little more. And it was playing in the Southern Conference. And at that time, and I can't really say now, at that time, the Southern Conference was a beast. If you weren't playing D1 ball and you were playing 1AA like I was, that's what it was called at the time, right? Instead of FCS. To play in the Southern Conference was an honor. I mean, because a lot of talent was coming through the Southern Conference.
Did the fact of playing at Notre Dame ever coming through the, because if it's me, I'm thinking I'm going to Navy. Who's Navy going to play? Well, they played a pretty good schedule being an independent, and they played Notre Dame every year. You would have got to play in Notre Dame Stadium. Did that even cross your mind, or is that so trivial that not something?
No, it did. It did cross my mind, Flip. I mean, that their schedule was the thing that almost made me stick with that decision. Yeah. I mean, when you look at their schedule and you see them playing Naval Academy, Georgia Tech, going all around the country, playing Air Force, that was hard to overlook. But here's what I think, and God bless the guys that can go and sit and wait for their chance to play for 2 years. I wanted to play. So knowing I had the opportunity, that somebody was going to give me the opportunity to play right away, that was no guarantee, but I felt like it was a chance I had to take.
Now, look, it sounds like it came down to Navy versus VMI, and you changed your mind in the 10th or 11th hour. Both of those, I'll call them campuses, but technically I think they're both military installations. Yep. Some people love the look and feel of both places. Other people are like, not so much. It's too much gray in both places.
Agreed.
Was the campus appealing to you at VMI?
It was different. It was different. But no, it was not the most appealing thing. I mean, when you come on post and you go in barracks, I mean, it was a scene. It felt like a scene out of the early 1900s. It really did, if not earlier. I mean, you're in this barracks that opens up to the open air on the inside. Your showers you got to walk to the showers in the cold of winter. Got to walk to the bathroom in the cold of winter. It was sparse. So no, that wasn't the appealing piece of VMI. From a football standpoint, it was about the ability to play early. From an academic standpoint, it was about the fact that the professors seemed invested in me. And I'll even add, from a military standpoint, it was going to be my choice and not something that I had to do.
So that's where I was going to go next.
Mm-hmm.
So you grow up in a military family, you live on a base for a lot of your early life. Your two main schools you're thinking about going to are both military schools.
Yeah.
Why did you never join the military? What stopped you from doing that?
I would say I was more like my mom in that way. I like being home. I liked consistency. I didn't like the idea that I could be stationed somewhere for 4 years and I got to go somewhere for 2 and come back here, go there, be moving around. It's really that. The other things that come with the military are very attractive to me. I just couldn't, where some people get thrilled about the moving around and the travel, I never could wrap my head around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I live like a 10-minute drive from where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so look, I went to high school with some guys who played football at VMI or baseball, and their experience on the rat line was different than the kids that weren't playing sports. But you were still on the rat line. You were still a rat. Talk to us about your rat line experience.
Rat line experience. Here's what I'll say about that. What it boils down to is when you're an athlete in the rat line, the guys at that time, all guys, right? It wasn't a co-ed school. The guys that were not athletes weren't too fond of athletes. They thought that we got out of a lot of the rat line activity. I challenged that, and I invited any one of them to come practice with me any day, just to understand that, hey, we might not be doing what you're doing, but you're not doing what we're doing either. It's not all fun. Yeah, the game looks fun. It's entertaining, but there's a lot of hard work that goes on behind that. It was tough. My coach was very much into us being as much a part of the rat line as possible. The idea of another guy, I'm 18 years old, the idea of a 19-year-old in my face screaming and yelling, just you had to swallow your pride quickly. Because I mean, if it's one of those things that was going on in your mind is, well, if we were in the streets, this really wouldn't happen. You know? So it was a lot of swallowing your pride. I was in the best shape I ever been in. I probably did 100 push-ups, if not more, a day, from upperclassmen telling me to get on my face and do push-ups. So I look back on that time and I'm like, man, I was in hellified shape. But I also look back on that time and say, that's where you learned a lot of inner discipline, because it was a lot of guys that if we were at a normal school and some of that stuff happened, I'd been like, yeah, it's time to throw down a little bit.
Yeah, it would happen once.
Yeah.
How many short dudes that were upperclassmen made a beeline to you because you were a big football player?
You know, the interesting thing, man, I felt like they passed out a memo and said, hey, this guy is like a really good quarterback. Give him hell as soon as you see him. It was ridiculous. And yeah, it was crazy the amount of guys that like their heads were at my chin and they're screaming at me. They're supposed to be in my ear, but they're like talking to my chest. It was actually quite comical. It's funny you asked that.
It's always the little ones, Al. It's always
it is.
Kevin, you look like you're about to say something.
Well, I was going to ask, can you explain what the rat line is for us folks that have no idea what you're talking about?
So the rat line is a couple things. So in a physical sense, the rat line is an imaginary line in barracks in which all freshmen have to walk. And basically it's you have to square your corners, you have to walk along the rails, you can't walk next to the doors, you can't make eye contact with any upperclassmen. It's this imaginary line that you have to walk at what we call a strain. and that's an exaggerated form of attention. Okay, so that's the physical rat line. The non-physical rat line is it's like being in a fraternity. Hey, you all come in, you're rats. You haven't earned the ability to be called a class. You're going through this initiation period, your first 5 months, before we recognize you as being part of us, of our brotherhood. So that's what the rat line basically is.
So, hazing, I know it's gotten controversial over recent years. Did that take place at VMI?
There's a fine line between what happened at VMI on a day-to-day and hazing, Kevin.
No, I
Yeah.
know.
But I didn't go to VMI. Al, would you view what happened back when you were at VMI as hazing?
It would be called hazing today. Back then, no, we didn't think of it as hazing. There definitely were things that happened that today would be called hazing. And you always had guys that pushed the limits, right?
Yeah.
But you know, you also had guys that were hopefully there were guys around that say, hey guys, that's enough. You know, you're pushing it too far.
I feel like that. Yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I feel like that at a place like VMI, there's probably a few more of those kind of guys than there might be at a regular college with with fraternity hate. Anyway, we don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but yeah, I appreciate the answer though.
I mean, it's good. The VMI produces a lot of different and there are a lot of different personalities that come into a military school like VMI. One of the things that we joked about was a high school zero could be a VMI hero. The one thing about the rat line, the whole idea behind the rat line was you take a Al Lester, somebody that probably feels pretty good about himself, and you take a kid that wasn't very popular, made good grades, not a lot of people know him, may not have had a lot of friends, and you break them down to an equal playing field. There's no favoritism. That's what it's all about. You guys, you're all gonna get
having big brothers at VMI. So how did it work?
So really, you just kind of got assigned a big brother. You got assigned a big brother when you got there, or you could just find somebody and ask them. But generally, what we did as athletes was we tried to look out for the rats that were coming in and hook them up with athletes from other sports.
So your big brothers, you were saying, both live in Richmond now. Were they both athletes playing different sports?
Well, my big brother was a basketball player, Lester Johnson. He runs Mama J's in town.
Okay.
Great guy. He played basketball there for 5 years. He redshirted 1 year, played a 5th year. And he's in town now, like I said, running a local business. Jonathan Mayo was his roommate and is what we would call my uncle big brother, if you will. And he runs an organization here in town with Michael Robinson, former Verina standout and Seattle Seahawk, called Team Excel. So those guys are both doing well, and they're here local. We catch up from time to time.
Hey, Al, can you see us?
I can.
So I don't know if you saw our faces when you said, yeah, Jonathan Mayo's partner is Michael Robinson.
I didn't see your face.
It sounds like you're going to hook us up with Mike Rob.
I could do that.
That'd be awesome, man. All right, so playing football at VMI, were y'all good all 4 years? Middle of the road, not so good? What was that experience like?
Not so good all 4. And here's what I'll say. Not so good all four to everybody else. We had two what we would consider productive years in the middle. But my first year and my senior year were awful. First year we went 1-11. Yeah, I'm looking at your faces now. We didn't win a game until our last game against Appalachian State. They were ranked 9th in the country on 1AA. Didn't think we were going to win. Obviously, didn't think we were going to win that one. But somehow we played a game of the season. We win that game, and that set us off on a good foot going forward. And let me say this, and this is a quick little story. When you're coming in and you're thinking you're the hot stuff coming in, I'm gonna change this program because they hadn't won a lot of games before that. I'm coming in. I know the program's not doing well. I'm gonna change it. Me and my brother Rats, right? Our first game of my rat year, we're beating University of Richmond in Lexington. We're beating them 31-17 going into the fourth quarter. I'm like, what's been their problem all this time? They beat us 34-31. And yeah, we don't win another game until 10 weeks later. So I got humbled pretty quickly. Then we go into my sophomore year and we win 4 games. Let me tell you, winning 4 games at that time was like winning 9 in our book. To turn it around that way and to actually know that teams had to respect us when we showed up, that was a big turnaround. Thomas Haskins was he was our All-American. Handed off the ball a lot, tried to throw it around a lot, had really good receivers as a freshman and as a sophomore. Believe it or not, I threw for more yards in those 2 years than I did as a junior and a senior. We get to my junior year, I believe we go 3-8 again. We go 3-8. I was going to say 3-8 again, but we went 4-7 the previous year. Look, I love the guys that were in it with me at receiver, but we were shorthanded. We had a backup quarterback, a walk-on. We're starting receivers at the 1AA level. They did everything they could out on that field, and I respect them for it. But, that's not what they were recruited to play. So we struggled passing the ball. And it was a frustrating year for me because, at that time, I'm feeling pretty good about myself and how I'm progressing as a player and wanted to throw it around a lot more. But at the same time, it was Thomas's senior year. I knew we were going to hand him the ball a lot, and we did that. And he ended his career as the leading rusher in 1AA, which was such a cool thing to be a part of. We get to my senior year. We change coaches. It was a very interesting time for me because in that transition, I knew that the new coach wanted to start moving on because my time was up, right? He only had a season with me. He wanted to start moving on, see what else he had. So at that time, I had started every game of my career. We play against the University of Richmond here in town. I get hurt. I hurt my knee. I don't start the next 2 games. That was somewhere in the middle of the season, and then I start the rest of the season. Anyway, there was a lot of dissension on our team that year. I'm making a short story pretty long. We didn't win a game.
Oh. Woo.
And what was interesting about that year was we didn't come that close to winning the game.
Al, that's got to be a hard way to end your career at VMI.
It was a hard way to end my career because I felt like it started on such a high note. But what I fell back on, Paul, at the end of the day, I laugh about it now. I had a hard time talking about how my career ended when I first graduated. But I got out of it what I was there for. It was to have a great experience playing football. I played in 44 games in college. I started in 42. And I walked away in 4 years with an engineering degree, in which I was on a full ride. So it served its purpose. But yeah, it was, from an athletic standpoint, a hell of a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, I'm not trying to perfect the math here, but 8-36.
8-36. Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be rough, man, because you're playing a ton. You expect to be better than that. You expect to be a lot better than that, right?
Of course. I could deal with what we dealt with my rat year because I was new. I didn't know what I didn't know. Hell, I will even say that I was part of the problem. I came in there slinging that thing around. I think I threw 15 picks that year. But at the same, that was just, I was that confident in myself. And we as a team, we got better. We were getting better. We had the 4-7 year. At that point, what you're thinking, what's going on in our minds is, okay, we're building in the right direction, right? So then we have my junior year, and we lose our starting receiver. We lost 3 starting receivers, and now we're starting the guy that's my backup quarterback, and we're starting a couple walk-ons at receiver. It's going to be tough to throw the ball, and they get the key on Thomas, and you're like, okay, I can even live with that, knowing the circumstances we're in. It's tough for us to throw, and they're keying on the guy, even though he's as great as he is. It's going to be tough for us to be good offensively. So you can even rationalize that in your mind. What's tough to rationalize is you become a senior and you lose your coach. There's dissension in the locker room, and it shows on the field every week. So it just became tough week to week, just to execute. But, I believe you go through things for a reason. And, the reason for me, hey, even the best made plans don't come through. But what did you do? Did you work hard? Did you commit? Did you give to it? Did you give to it the same or more than you did before? And what I feel good about is that I did. So, I walk away from it with no regrets.
So I'm going to ask you the same question I asked you earlier about high school. Was there a play that stood out for you, both good and bad? What was your best play, or the most memorable play in college, and what was the worst?
The best play in college was my first touchdown. ETSU. What was neat about ETSU, East Tennessee State University. What was neat about East Tennessee State, they, believe it or not, at that level, they had a dome. They played inside. And like I said, I was a gunslinger at that point. Dude, I remember this. They were in cover 3. Okay. Deep safety, corners getting deep. We're running the wrong route against the cover 3. My slot receiver, I don't want to get too technical on the football stuff, but my slot receiver is running a post. I can't even tell you what the other receivers are running because all I heard coach say was a post. And in my mind at that time, And Kevin, is funny. We've talked about this week with my Miami team. In my mind at that time, as long as my receiver could get even with the safety, I was letting it go. And in this case, he did. I don't think the safety thought I was going to let it go, but I just threw it over his head, basically, into a bad coverage, but it just caught him off guard. The problem with that was I tried it again that game, and I got picked. But, hey.
How far could you throw a football back then?
Probably about 65, 70 yards in the air.
Cool. So
that's slinging it. 99% of humanity can't do that.
It was a pretty cool thing, and we talked about Michael Robinson before. I had the pleasure of coaching him his senior year of high school at Verina. And not to get off on a tangent, but we used to do this thing after our Thursday practice where we would start on the 30 and we would throw the ball to see who could hit the goal post. It was like a deep ball accuracy thing. And it's funny. I always knew that I could chuck it pretty far. When it really hit me that I really could throw the ball far was when I was on the opposite 40 and threw it and hit the goal post.
That's slinging it, man.
I started doing the math. I'm like, that's pretty good.
Hey, so Al, back to the notion of having a really disappointing senior year, but not having any regrets. I think there's a lesson in that for your kids, my kids, Kevin kids, that, hey, do your best, strive to improve, really hyper-focused on the things you can control, and the rest of it that's outside of your control, do your best to influence it, but understand you can't control it.
Oh, that is the message. That's what I try to relay to my kids all the time. Control your controllables. That's all you can do, right? You put in the work. You try to influence your teammates to put in the work. When you get together and it's tough, hey, as long as you're working together towards the same goal, great. But be able to say whenever you're done competing, whenever you're done doing anything that matters to you, that you gave it everything you got. And I know it sounds cliche, but my girls are athletes. I preach that to them all the time. The game is fun. The winning the game is practice and the work you put in on your own. That's when you win the game. It's not at the game. So show up and have fun at the game. Put all the work in when the lights are off. That way, when the lights are on, you can have fun.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's real quickly talk about, in your opinion, Al, the Dolphins' prospects for the playoffs this year. Why are you laughing, Kevin?
That'll be quick.
Kevin, what's interesting about that is I'm not going to fight that.
I mean, I wasn't trying to talk trash.
Our third string quarterback is not as good as San Francisco's, obviously. So what chance do we have? Get lucky? I mean, there's always a chance. You step on the field, right? These are pros. I don't know. He might show up and have a great game. What do I think's going to happen? I think we're going to get thumped pretty good. I just don't think we're going to be able to effectively move the ball. We got running backs that are dinged up. I think they're going to play 8 in the box, force us to throw the ball. And from what I've seen from Skylar Thompson, he's a little hesitant to let it go.
Yeah, well, and Al, the other thing there is you're going up against arguably the most talented team, a team that plays well together, and given the Damar Hamlin situation, maybe the most emotionally connected team in the playoffs. Maybe in a long time.
Agreed. I completely agree. So, I'll watch the game this weekend, but I'm expecting a quick exit from the playoffs. But, hey, I'm glad after being 8-3 and thinking we would have clinched the playoff berth 5 weeks ago, to be in the playoffs, I'll take it.
Hey, and just so you know, I laughed in the beginning, but I've been on the Dolphins bandwagon all year. picking them to win, looking at, almost hoping they win. And never been a Dolphins fan. So I think it's disappointing I'm sure it's disappointing for Al as a Dolphins fan. It's disappointing for us other fans who were hoping to see, a full healthy Dolphins team try to beat the Bills, because they beat them once and almost beat them twice in the regular season. So it's kind of sad that they're not going to have that chance.
Let me add this, though, guys, and not to prolong this conversation, because you're right. The question is very short answer. As a fan, I have real concerns about Tua's future.
Yeah.
I really do. The fact that he suffered, in my opinion, his third concussion, and here we are 3 weeks later, he still can't play. That's a problem, a huge problem.
Yeah.
You played more football than Kevin and me combined, but yeah, 3 concussions in a season is not a good thing for anybody.
Yeah.
No.
All right, Kevin, hit him with your question, man.
All right, Al, you ready for the question?
I'm ready.
All right. So you are a late night talk show host tonight, just for one night. And you got to pick a male guest, a female guest, a musical group, and a comedian. Dead or alive.
Male guest, female guest, a musical group, and a comedian. Okay.
I mean, just like a normal Jimmy Fallon, Jay Leno type show. Now, normally they'll just have a musical guest and not both, but Paul and I expanded this to have a comedian in there as well, just to learn a little more about folks. So, if you're ready, and like I said, it could be dead or alive, it can be you going for the best show ever, or it could just be Al's personal show, whatever you want to do.
All right.
So fire away. Male guest, who's that?
If I could do any male guest right now, dead or alive, it would be my dad. Not to make it somber, my dad passed away 10 years ago yesterday.
Oh.
And what's interesting about that, losing a parent, is I don't have anything readily available with his voice. So I try to recall his voice in my ear. So to be able to have a conversation with him, not about anything in particular, but just to hear his voice, I would say my dad as a male guest. Awesome. A female guest, I would pick Whitney Houston.
Why is that?
First crush as a young boy.
Well, and arguably the finest voice to ever be on her.
Yes, arguably. First crush. It would be Whitney Houston without a doubt. Musical artist. I would pick Rakim of Eric B. and Rakim.
Nice.
My first rap tape was Eric B. and Rakim's Follow the Leader. I still, if any of those songs come on today, I still sing along with them today. Comedian, that's tough.
Too many to pick from?
It's kind of out of my generation a bit, man. But Richard Pryor is probably the funniest dude ever, man.
He was funny before he got burned. He was funny after. He's one of the greats.
Yeah, he's one of the funniest dudes ever. I mean,
and you know what? Every comedian you're probably thinking about that you could have chosen from the last 30 years, he was their hero.
So without a doubt.
Show. Yeah.
Without a doubt.
No, that's a good show. Thanks for playing along.
Yeah, and Al, you listing your dad as the male guest. One of the things we try to do on this podcast is record these conversations for posterity. And so your daughters will always be able to refer to this and any other audio recording or video recording they have of you.
I appreciate that. Thank you, man. I really do.
And speaking of your kids, tell us about your wife and daughters, and we'll close with that.
Oh, man, my lovely wife, Melanie. we met in 2000, got married in 2002. 20 years in, it has felt like the blink of an eye. That's the rock of my life. Like when you talk about having a partner in life, that's what my wife is to me. Loves me unconditionally, sets my behind straight when it needs to be set straight, is there for me, is my rock when I need her. So she's everything to me. We had our first daughter, Ava, in 2006, 16 years old. 16 years old. What can I say? A little bit of everything going on right now, but I mean, that's the kid that made me a dad. I never lose sight of that. And to look at her now doing great in school. She is a excellent softball player. Was recently verbally committed to play college softball at Hampton University. I couldn't be more proud of that kid. My baby girl, who's actually sitting beside me right now,
Maddie,
Miss Madeline Lester. I mean, what can I say? This kid is daddy's girl. And I mean daddy's girl. She's an excellent kid, friendly as all get out, nice, polite, does excellent in school. I don't think the kid has ever made a B. I don't think she's ever made less than a 95. We don't even talk about school, which scares me. She's an excellent softball player in her own right, probably following her sister's footsteps. And I'm glad you asked about them.
Yeah.
Everything for me, and it's probably what's taken me so long to get back on the show because of commitments and so forth, is family first for me. And that's unequivocal. That they are what comes first for Al, period, point blank.
Hey, Al, I want to tell two quick things about your daughters.
Uh-huh.
Number one, Paul, Al will often bring Ava and Maddie out with him to the golf course, and I'll bring Briggs or Brody, whoever wants to play with us that day. And they are the nicest two young women you would ever meet. I mean, they are polite, they're funny, they're just perfect to sit over there and you can go up and talk to them and laugh and joke with them. They are the most well-behaved young women. Not that young girls are worse behaved than young boys, because believe me, I can tell you all about that. But just so well behaved, and I credit Melanie for all of that. The second thing,
wait a minute,
that's who you should credit.
The second thing, and I'm going to wrap this all into one big circle for you, a little bow on it, because we talk about golf with Al. We talk about one of the things that you and I connected on long ago, Paul, was wiffle golf. One of the things that I used to fear.
Guys, is this rain loud on my end? Because it's coming down out here.
No, we can't hear it.
No, can you still hear us?
Okay, good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I hear you fine.
So we're playing wiffle golf, and one of the things that I always feared about wiffle golf, I didn't want kids there because I was scared some inebriated adult would end up hitting a kid with a golf club, and God only knows what could happen, right? Well, Al brought Ava and Maddie out to play, and well, they weren't playing, I don't believe. They were just walking with us, and I was in Al's group. And we had gotten to like the ninth hole, and you heard this, and I hope you don't mind me telling the story, Al, because it's actually
I don't.
Very, very well, you'll see what the point is of it. But you hear this thud, and you turn around, and you have to remind me, I don't know, I think it was Maddie hitting Ava?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, total accident. But the thing about it was Al was so calm. And now inside he was probably, his heart was racing, but he scooped her up and just headed for the car. And I was walking behind him going, "You all right, man? Everything good?" And he just like, "It's all good. We got it. We're good." And boom, he was gone. Obviously, she ended up okay. But he was so calm, cool, and collected. And one of the funniest things he said after that was, I said, you good with it? He goes, man, I was playing so good. He's like, I had a chance to win the jacket this year.
But he was taking care of his babies.
It all comes back to that, right?
Absolutely.
No doubt. Well, hey, Al, I appreciate you doing this tonight. I mean, obviously, you're with your daughter now. You were at her, I guess, a softball practice.
Yeah, she had a workout tonight. They're trying to. It wasn't really practice. They were trying to hit the gym, do some cardio, do some weightlifting. So I was just sitting out waiting on her.
All right, right on.
So I apologize about being remote and about my connection and not being at home. But yeah,
the magic of editing will take care of a few things. Yeah, it's all good, man. But I appreciate you doing this, Al. It was fun talking to you.
Awesome. Good job, Al.
Did we lose him?
Say it one more time for me, Paul. Yeah, I think this rain is getting me. But say it one more time. I'm sorry.
We just said we appreciate you doing this, man. Taking the time to talk to us.
Oh man, I'm happy to. I hate that it's taking this long, and I'll make sure whatever happens, if it won't be about me, because there ain't much more I can say about me. But if we get on and talk about something else, I will be there in person, so my bad connection does not happen again.
Hey, Al, you are officially off the clock.
I appreciate that, buddy.
All right, thanks, Al. Have a good night, man.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. It was fun.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also really appreciate if you'd rate and review us. You can find us at scodupodcast.com.